Let's go into the lifestyle modifications that somebody who is living with any form of cancer can implement that have a scientifically documented effect at reducing the risk, at reversing the cancer process. And secondarily, also within that umbrella, if somebody is at risk for the development of cancer, what are some of the lifestyle practices that they can put into play that can significantly limit their risk for developing cancer into the future?
Yeah, so let's start with diet, since a lot of what people have come to the summit for is diet, right? And a lot of what you teach through Mastering Diabetes is very much similar in what we teach through Conquering Cancer. A lot of similarities, some slight differences, but the underlying principles are the same. And that's the key thing to take away here is principles. One is we know that a whole food, plant-based diet is going to be your most nutrient-dense, least inflammatory, most anti-cancer diet that you can find out there. And when people tell me there's not one diet for every single person, I say, bullshit, there is a diet for every single person. It's called the whole food plant-based diet. And the proof is in the pudding, right? It's in the whole food pudding.
Right.
The proof is there because you can take any person with any blood type, with any disease, and put them on a whole food plant-based diet that's really well structured, and 99.9% of the time see all of their markers improve and see their health improve and see their life improve. And again, I'm not saying, it's guaranteed that they're going to reverse these diseases or whatever, but you can see improvements in a lot of ways. And in many cases, you can actually see these diseases go away completely or lead to a better quality of life where the disease kind of regresses a bit or it stops. Let's say you have a stage 4 cancer, you got a tumor and it's, very large tumor. Maybe you stop the growth of that. Maybe you stop the angiogenesis process, the spreading of, new blood to new tumors. So maybe it doesn't metastasize any further, whatever. You improve quality of life and you extend that person's life years and years, or you're like Elaine Gibson, who started green juicing and went to a whole food plant-based diet and 100% organic and meditating and relaxation practices and exercise every day. And when she was told in her 70s, late 60s, that she wouldn't see her grandchildren grow up, and she said, because she had stage 4 cancer diagnosis, and she said, no way, I don't accept that. And she went to town implementing all these things that we teach. And here she is in her 70s now, healthier than she's ever been, vital, incredible human being, totally cancer-free. Or Dr. Veronique Dessanier, cancer came back a second time as well. Breast cancer, same thing. Primarily plant-based diet, not 100%, but implement a lot of the principles that we teach. And that's why I'm saying principles are more important than it has to be strict 100% this way or that way. Because if you follow the principles, you can still see significant benefits. Or any number of the dozens and dozens of people that I've met and interviewed and have their healing stories inside healinglife.net, where they did switch to a plant-based diet, whole food plant-based diet, and they watched their cancer improve or completely reverse and go away. Stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, colon cancer, breast cancer, you name it. So we know it's possible. We know there's tremendous hope. And we know it's not only the diet, but it's a holistic approach, right? Which is, I know, also what you teach. And so there's a lot of commonalities there. But the whole food plant-based diet, meaning how is that diet good for everybody? Because there are literally hundreds of thousands of edible medicinal plant species that have been identified on the planet today. Hundreds of thousands. Don't you think in that hundreds of thousands you could find something that is accessible and right for every person? Right?
Okay, here's a question for you. When you say that there's hundreds of thousands of edible medicinal plants, can you define what that means? Are you referring to plants that have a very powerful, potent effect on a particular disease state? Or are you referring to something like carrots and tomatoes as having medicinal qualities as well?
Yes. So I'm referring to plants that are edible to the human body. We can eat, and they have some, when I say medicinal in that regard, they have some vitamins, nutrients, minerals, phytonutrients, amino acids, anti-inflammatories, antioxidants, whatever form and variation of that, they have some or more of those in those plants. Meaning, when we talk about use, as Hippocrates says, use food as thy medicine, medicine as thy food, talking about food as medicine, right? Because to help combat cancer, for example, we need anti-inflammatories. We need antioxidants, right? We know that turmeric, curcumin is a powerful, powerful anti-inflammatory. So when you take turmeric, you are reducing the inflammatory process, therein reducing the risk for cancer. When you take boswellia, frankincense, right, also has been scientifically shown to reduce inflammation and have anti-cancer properties. You can take boswellia. When you eat mushrooms, there was a massive meta-analysis that was done where they found that people who ate 18 grams of mushrooms per day, which is about 2 small mushrooms, versus people who ate 0 mushrooms per day, had a 45% decreased risk of cancer. Just 2 mushrooms per day because of the incredible potent anti-cancer properties of those mushrooms. And there's lots of different mushrooms out there. It doesn't really matter. Some have a little more benefit than others, shiitake, maitake, ganoderma, reishi, these kinds of things. But it doesn't really matter. Just adding some edible mushrooms, you don't want to go out and eat poison mushrooms. And I'm not talking about, hallucinogenic mushrooms either. Like certainly those have different spiritual, mental, emotional benefits. I'm just talking about edible mushrooms that I look at food as medicine, right? And so, yes, when you look at kale and you look at the sulforaphane, right? The sulforaphane in kale and green leafy vegetables has been shown to be anti-cancer. So we study through my nonprofit at that I'm on the board of the nonprofit at the Beljanski Foundation. We actually do scientific research into plants to determine if they have anti-cancer properties. And so we've researched quite a few so far. We've been researching green tea over the years and have found incredible properties, anti-cancer properties with green tea and how they reduce angiogenesis. They improve apoptosis, which is basically healthy cellular death, right? They have all these kinds of amazing anti-cancer properties just by drinking green tea, for example. So you can add green tea to your daily regimen. You can add turmeric to your cooking or take capsules. You can add boswellia. You can add mushrooms, right? Now, all of these plants that we're discovering around the world, we're finding that they have multiple mechanisms of action in which they create a physiological response that not only helps fight against cancer, but helps reduce the inflammation that leads to heart disease, to diabetes, to neurodegenerative disease, to Alzheimer's. And it's in the plant kingdom. You're not finding these nutrients in animal flesh. You're not finding it in milk. And in fact, there's studies that have shown that milk, cow's milk, any kind of milk increases the risk of breast and prostate cancer. There was a 2019 study published in the Journal of Osteopathic Medicine from the Mayo Clinic, researchers from the Mayo Clinic, where they looked at 47 studies comprising more than 1 million participants. So it was a massive review. It was a comprehensive review, right? And they found that plant foods likely lower prostate cancer risk, while dairy products appear to increase prostate cancer risk. Most studies showed that plant-based foods are associated with either decreased or an unchanged risk of prostate cancer, whereas animal-based foods, particularly when people have dairy, milk, cheese, from in the dairy, I've seen studies because people ask me all the time, is it goat's cheese, is it just as bad, or goat's milk or cow's milk? I've actually seen in the culprit here is the IGF-1. So dairy increases IGF-1, insulin growth factor like 1, which is responsible for increasing cancer cell proliferation. So, we want to reduce IGF-1. And when you're drinking milk from any animal, even sheep, goat, doesn't matter, you're going to increase IGF-1. And so, that's one of the underlying mechanisms. I'm sure there's more and things that we haven't even discovered yet at why cancer seems to increase on an animal-based diet, especially when you're having any kind of milk. But we continue to see this, right? And there was a study done that was in 2020. A lot of people probably know the Loma Linda, University of California, right? And they discovered that high intakes of dairy milk were associated with a greater risk of breast cancer. And that cohort contained about 52,000 North American women. And they were followed for almost 8 years. And so even as little as 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup of dairy milk per day was associated with an increased risk of breast cancer of 30%.